Well, welcome to the Signal Bridge Part 2, the much awaited next episode. Before proceeding further with any of the detailed wiring kind of work, decided it'd be a good idea to test the LEDs in these old signal masts. So I've checked them, hooked them up to a 12 volt power supply, making sure to have a current limiting resistor about 1,000 ohms in place to keep from frying the LEDs. And there you saw it did illuminate, and I am switching the leads to reverse polarity to check to see that they illuminate the other colors. There we got green over red. The first time, of course, if you noticed, was red over green. There's one tested pretty good. On my railroad, a red over green signal is a diverging clear signal. A green over red is just a clear straight ahead. So I've tested the two double-headed signals, and then I hooked up the single head signal there you see, and obviously it was not illuminating, and clearly that LED was fried. So I went ahead and popped it out of the back. I try not to glue the LEDs into the signal heads in the event that you have to replace one. It's easy if you can just pop it out. I have had to glue some in place in some cases because they just didn't fit snugly. In that case, if one goes dead, you end up having to drill it out, which is not a problem. So anyway, looking into the parts bin, I've located another red-green two-leg LED and test fitting it into the signal head, and that fits in there quite nicely. It's got its in a brand new state. It has nice long legs, but those will have to be trimmed off. But before going ahead and wiring it and soldering in, it's like, oh, it's a good idea to give it a test. And there it illuminates red with that polarity. And we'll go ahead and again reverse the polarity and check to make sure that it lights up green when you have the other, when you swap polarity, and there it goes, lights up green. So that LED is obviously functioning and good enough to go ahead and hook up. So it's time to bring in the helpful hands. It's always nice to have those around to help hold on to things. And we'll go ahead and there's that LED with its legs trimmed. And I like to, when working with those little parts, I go ahead and heat up the legs there, and now the wire ends. And I think of it as like buttering them with solder. That way, when I put those wires up to the legs of the LED, I don't have to also be sticking a strip of solder in there too. And I just think it makes it a whole lot easier. So I've got it hooked up, and there a test again, red and green. The LED is working. And so the next phase of the operation, you may recall if you saw part one that these old signal masts were the victims of a cat attack a couple years ago. They had basically chewed off the ladders and the platforms, but it also scratched up the main body of the mast. So I'm taking a little sandpaper and cleaning up a little bit of filing to clean off some of the remnants of the old platforms and ladders. And we'll go ahead and put some of our acrylic craft paint, the silver variety, on them. Get them looking probably as close to brand new as they're going to be. I believe when they were brand new, I may actually have spray painted them silver. But given that the signal heads and everything are already on there, I really don't want to go through the hassle of masking them off and spray painting. Besides, I'm really just touching up quite a bit of it. So get that paint on there, and it will end up looking pretty good, I think. Got to touch up all three of them. The cats really did a number on those things. But they'll look really good, I think, attached to our overhead signal bridge. I use that craft paints of this Apple Barrel, Americana, Folk Art, easily acquired at Walmart. I always keep a lot of different colors on hand because I do like to build buildings, and there you can see some examples of one of my downtown streets with a lot of different colors that I've used. And so now we've got the signal bridge pretty well assembled. I think I've got that round file in hand there. One thing I had to do is, after I spray painted the signal bridge with the flat black paint, some paint got in the holes in the brackets, and also with the fresh coat of brushed on paint on the mast bodies, the fit was a little bit tight, so I did have to go ahead and use the round file to ream them out a little bit and make sure they would fit. I've got some 30, or what is that, 28 gauge hookup wire. I get that from Evan Designs. You can get it at evandesigns.com. I end up buying it mostly on eBay. That particular company, Evan Designs, has a lot of good products for modeling. They sell a lot of the small gauge wires that we need, and also LED lights and a variety of other of miniature electronic stuff. There's the wire strippers you can get from them. You buy some small gauge wire. They will include a wire stripper that they've set up for that particular gauge of wire, and that's really handy to have. You can't get a wire stripper for that gauge down at your local Ace Hardware. There, for comparison, is one of my regular wire strippers, and I think you can maybe read the numbers. It goes up to 26 gauge on that particular one. Again, totally inadequate for the 28 gauge wire. And you might say, well, why do you need the 28 gauge? And well, one thing is I can't get two wires of a larger gauge up through the signal mast tube at all. So I have to go with the largest gauge that will fit is the 28 gauge. There I've got my Ultra Walmart Hyper Tough brand soldering iron. There's a little bit of a story there. I've always had a Weller soldering iron. I had one die a couple years ago, and I got another one, and then for some unknown reason, it also died. Don't know why. I needed a new one. I like the 80-watt model Weller for what I do. On that particular day that I needed a new one, I wanted to get on with my work. They didn't have one on hand at Ace. I thought, well, I'll go see what they have at Walmart, and they had a nice looking model, and I went ahead and tried it, and it actually works quite well. So here I'm attaching the drop wires to drop down through the layout. Twist the two wires together after stripping the ends, and then of course putting on a small, about a half inch long section of heat shrink tube. Heat shrink tube was a great thing that was invented that helps out, in all kinds of industries, but very nice in the model railroad world. So you just put that heat shrink over the soldered joint, warm it with your soldering iron tip. You don't have to touch it to it, but run it past right nearby. It shrinks that tube right down onto the soldered joint, protects it from short circuits that could be possible. And the other thing is it just helps make the joint more secure. It should be, if you've soldered it properly. You always have to remember, and I think you can kind of see it here a little bit. It's not a soldering tutorial, but after twisting the wires together, you go ahead and you really heat the work first, heat the wire, and then touch the solder to the wire, as opposed to heating the solder and having it, drip or whatever onto the wires there. Heat the work, point it with the solder. Here's some heat shrink on the black lead. One last step to do is I go ahead and solder a current limiting resistor onto each of the red wires. I got 12 volts running from the control panel out to the turnouts and signals, and I've got to knock that down because the LEDs are in fact a 3-volt. So I've got all 6 of my wires to drop down through to the layout, and got them all ready to go. So we'll be ready. The next phase of the operation is to drop the wires down and hook them up. Thank you.